Welcome, everyone, to this monumental occasion. As we are in the midst, of course, of Chestnut Hill College's 100th year, we're pleased, as part of the 100th Anniversary Committee, to welcome you to this next in our event series, where we hear from Sister Mary Helen Kashuba about the publication of Tradition and Risk, Volume 2. Funding for this work was responsible and supplied by the Council for Independent Colleges, and particularly the Network for Vocation and Undergraduate Education, or NetView. And those of us who have been around Chestnut Hill College for the last several years, we've had a number of important works and programming and activities that have been sponsored by our NetView grant. And the financial resources and the technical resources from this grant were instrumental in supporting Sister Mary Helen in her research. So we're very grateful to NetView and the CIC for this generous financial contribution. My name is Ryan Murphy. I'm an assistant professor of sociology at Chestnut Hill College and also serve as the mission integration coordinator for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Philadelphia. And I like to think that I'm one of Sister Mary Helen's students who she tutors in research and Chestnut Hill College history and education. I am in awe of the work that you do, Sister Mary Helen, and honored to be able to share just a few minutes with you this afternoon. So what this afternoon will look like, I'm going to read a biography about Sister Mary Helen and her esteemed career at the college. Sister will give an overview of her most recent publication, along with some photographs that I think we'll all find exceedingly interesting. I will then return to the podium and ask Sister Mary Helen a couple of pointed questions before we open it up to questions and conversation with the audience, wrapping up around 3 p.m. with refreshments in the rotunda. So thank you again for being here. And now on to our esteemed author. Sister Mary Helen Kashuba is a professor of French and Russian and chair of the Department of Foreign Languages at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where she has taught since 1963. She received advanced degrees from Fordham University and Middlebury College. She is also the past president of the American Association of Teachers of French and is active in many other foreign language associations where she presents regularly and helps organize conferences. Sister Mary Helen has received numerous awards, including a Fulbright grant to France, Commandeur in the Palme Académique from the French government, the Lindback Award for Excellence in Teaching, and the Nelson Brooks Award for Distinguished Service to the Profession. Sister Mary Helen has published Tradition and Risk, the History of Chestnut Hill College chapter, to the History of Chestnut Hill College, now Tradition and Risk Volume 2, chapters in many books, numerous articles, and her research interests lie in foreign language literature and pedagogy, along with the history and spirit of the Sisters of St. Joseph and their institutions. Please join me in welcoming Sister Mary Helen Kashuba.
Thank you very much. And I hope everybody can see me if I sit here. And can you hear me? Can you hear me all right? Because I have difficulties hearing in this room, and I don't want to give other people difficulties when we're here. So let me know if you can't hear me, and I will articulate a little more slowly and hopefully clearly. All right? Well, it's wonderful to be here with you today, and it's wonderful to see all these seats filled. I thought, well, maybe we'll have a few. And I see some of my friends from the past are here, some of my former students, my colleagues, and it's really wonderful to see all of you and to think that you came to hear about tradition and risk. And I am going to speak briefly, and it will be briefly, even though, well, you know, I might have a tendency, foreign language teachers have the tendency to speak a little bit too much, but I'm going to hope to keep it, for about 20 minutes. And we hope that and if I don't answer your questions, you get time afterwards, all right? This is, you can see on the screen, what our new volume looks like, and I have it here that you can see, and we're going to say a few words about it.
Senate.
I'd like to tell you the history of a history. All right? And what you see up here in front of you now is Volume 1. Volume 1 was published in 1999 for the 75th anniversary of Chestnut Hill College. Some of you may have copies of it, and I hope you read it or at least looked at the pictures and enjoyed it. It goes from 1924 to 1999, 75 years, the first 75 years. And it's called Tradition and Risk. It's called Tradition and Risk because, to me, this is Chestnut Hill College. As I was doing Volume 1, I just one day, those words came to me, and I thought, this expresses what Chestnut Hill College is like. We have a lot of tradition here. We have sometimes been accused of being a little too traditional, but we have also taken risks. And if we didn't take risks, we would not be here for 100 years. Volume 1 took about 3 years of preparation, lots of work, over in the library, in the archives, and I had left piles of Xerox material. These were the pre-computer days. Computers were around, but we didn't have them at our disposal. There were a few computers around campus, but they just weren't used the way they were today. This is 25 years ago, and we've come a long way in 25 years. Right, Sister Lisa? And it's wonderful to have the computer now. I have very few papers this time around. Most of my material I have on the computer. I have tons of files on my computer, but that's a good way to do it. We did interviews with people. I used my memories. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And I did a lot of research. Thanks to Lorraine Coons in the archives, we were able to get a lot of material. She is a marvelous archivist. And also, I used the archives in the Mother House, and they are excellent. They are outstanding, and I can tell you we have a whole lot of material there. And my own reflection, what does it mean? And I think that's a very important part. The cover was done by Sister Margie Thompson, and I am very sorry to say that her name was never put in the book. And that we'll have to see that somehow that gets rectified, because this was her idea. And I actually wanted the same cover on Volume 2, but we didn't have the originals. And these are done in layers, and they just couldn't reproduce it without the original. And the idea is that you're going through the corridors of time and space. And also she designed the figures that are there so that you couldn't tell whether they were men or women. At that time, we were an all-women's college, 1999, but we didn't know which way things were going. So she wanted to leave it open to the future. And I think it's really a very good result. For the 50th anniversary, in 1974, Dr. John Lucas, who was an outstanding professor here, he lived from 1924 to 1919. He was born the same year as the college. And he taught here from 1947 to 1993. He came here after the Second World War.
Just talk over here.
Talk over there. All right, is that better?
For the video purpose, just talk right here. Right here.
Right here. All right. All right. Don't talk into the microphone. Do what he's telling me. All right. He came here in 1947 as a refugee from World War II. And Sister Maria Kostka was very impressed by him. She had a very good judgment over there because not only was he a teacher at Chestnut Hill College, he's a famous author. He has many books to his credit. How many, David?
37.
37, wow. He attained international fame as a historian, and in Hungary, in Budapest, at Ludovika University, there is now a building named after him. So he is a very famous person and was a wonderful person to know, and certainly a great teacher. For many of us that had him, he also taught me, and I'm pleased to say he was a great person. He wrote a sketch. He called his book A Sketch of the History of Chestnut Hill College. He didn't consider it a full-blown history, probably because he didn't have enough past at his disposal. And he was just not able to put things into all the context that he wanted. I did not ever hear his reasons why he called it that, but he gave us a wonderful sketch and a wonderful interpretation of the college. He included the history of the first class that was written by the first class. And I'd like to begin by what they said about the beginning. I have to look over here to read it. On September the 22nd, 1924, by the punctual assemblage of 15 charming damsels, who with much addition and subtraction were destined to form the nucleus of what is today, that was 1928 when that was written, the only Catholic women's college in Philadelphia. And that was Constance McGee. She wrote this, and when they graduated, and it was history of the first class. 1924 to 2001 is, actually it was 1999, but I'm going to 2001 because that was an important date that we're going to talk about now. But let's say, what was it like then when it was a women's college? Well, it was a women's college, women were all around, but don't think that there weren't men around at that time also. If you look at the picture over here, this was the Marriage of Figaro. And you can see that there are men and women, actors and singers in the opera. And this was a full-fledged opera. They did every bit of it. And it drew a large audience, and it was excellent. But there were men there too. And every time there was a performance, there were men around. And other times also, there were many men around. We also had men, before we went co-ed, we had men in continuing education and in the graduate school. So it wasn't totally a change from one extreme to another. Academics and activities were very important during that time. Now, as I said before, we often had the reputation of being a very conservative college. However, we were risk takers as well. We had a traditional look. Sisters of St. Joseph wore traditional habits until the mid-'80s. There were many Sisters of St. Joseph. We lived in the dorms, and we kept the place together, we thought. Anyway, it stayed together. But they were also risk takers. And in 1968, our students joined the revolts that were going on around the country and around the world. And parenthetically, I happened to be in Paris in 1968 when there was a big revolt in Paris, and our students had their own revolt here. And there were many other risk-taking actions that they did. We also moved into greater diversity. We had more minority students. In fact, by 2001, I did a head count of the minority students in the yearbook, and I found close to 1/4 of our students at that time were from diverse groups, which is really a wonderful thing because not too many schools had had moved that far in 2001. We also went in for greater globalization. Students studied abroad. International students came here. We did all types of service for different types of people. From the early days, this was a tradition that we had here, and certainly a tradition of service. Well, the great transition came in 2003. We went co-ed. When Sister Carol Vail announced the change to co-ed, she said, "Today we begin a new volume in our history." And I thought, this is great. This is how we're going to begin the new volume here also. She gave me my first words. It was a risk, but it worked. I don't think we'd be here today if we hadn't taken that risk. This was the easiest first element to research in Volume 2, and the easiest, because it was so well documented. It was a study done by the Teagle Foundation with 14 different colleges to explore whether or not coeducation was still feasible. Well, you can guess what the answer was. 3% of the young women, or of all of the people who responded, because they asked alums, they asked current college students, they asked high school students, they asked parents and teachers whether or not the young women were interested in an all-women's college. 3% of those interviewed, and they sent out thousands of questionnaires. So that was a very small proportion. So you can guess that was the only decision that we could make. And the consequences, I would say the consequences are, we're here to tell this story. All right, now, people ask me, what challenges did I have in doing this? Maybe you're going to ask me some more, but I'll tell you some that I had. First, the one I would say is a conflict between memory and objectivity. I was here for the past 25 years, and I remember pretty well. My students think I remember a little too well, maybe. And I also had my own opinions. However, if you're doing a history, you want to be objective. And that poses a bit of a conflict, because sometimes what I remember and what the records say are not necessarily the same thing. The college began a little before my time. I came here in 1963, so I was here for a lot of Volume 1 as well, and all of Volume 2, and at the end now, and I had a lot of memories and opinions. However, objectivity requires using documents, and I just want to tell you, the Sister Carol Vail is the best record keeper in the entire world. she really had so, I said to her, I don't have to interview you because you gave me, you left so much material, and it was so clear and really so well done. Many other documents as well. We did interviews. Our team actually did interviews, not just myself, but Ryan helped, and we interviewed some of our colleagues, we interviewed alums, and we got a lot of good material that way. And there are records, excellent records that are available in the archives and in the communications office, in many, many offices. There are more records than available than I read, I think, but there were a lot of them. But there was a conflict. Another challenge, history or chronology. Was I going, especially for the past 25 years, was I going to write a chronology, just say what happened, or am I going to interpret it a little bit? It's a little hard to interpret something only 25 years ago. So that are just the facts. History is an interpretation. There's distance, 1924, I could interpret. All right, that was 100 years ago. You can evaluate that. 2001, when we made the decision to go to co-ed, you can still evaluate that. There's some distance. 2024, forget it. It's too close. My solution was to try to put the present within the context of the past. And so what I did was arrange the chapters not chronologically, but thematically. And for each theme, I would try to go back into the past and give some background so that we could kind of get an idea where we came from, and the present becomes the consequence of the past. So these are the chapters, and I'm going to tell you just a couple of words about each one. First of all, transition. It was the transition to co-ed that I began with. I'm only telling you about volume 2. You don't have to hear about volume 1. But the transition, I go back to the beginning of the college, and actually back to the beginning of the Sisters of St. Joseph, and show that this transition to co-ed is within our tradition, and although it's a risk, it fits in to who we are. Expansion. When we went co-ed, not only did our numbers increase, but our buildings increased as well. And in the beginning of the 21st century, we saw many new buildings, even before co-ed. Martina Hall went up before we went co-ed. And when we take a look at our campus and see how we try to make our new campus fit into the old one, I think you get a picture of continuity. A college on two hills, that's Sugarloaf. And Sugarloaf also has a past. It was the Albert M. Greenfield estate. It had its own past in that way. It was Temple ran it as a conference center, and then we have had many experiences there as well. Globalization. Globalization, I would say, exploded in the 21st century. Maybe because travel was easier, we went to different places. Sister Lisa went to Africa, and Jackie was in Africa, and we had many others that went to Africa to do service work. We had service work here in this country. We had an increase in study abroad. We had many more people come from abroad, not only our professors and our lecturers, but also our students. In fact, after the Second World War, students began to come from abroad. Many refugees came here, and which is part of our mission of service. Diversity. We certainly increased the numbers of our students who came from different races, cultures, languages, countries in the course of the past 100 years. And it's marvelous to see how we have made ourselves diverse as well as enriched our campus with a number of students that have come from other places. I began that chapter with the story of Mother St. John Fontbonne. Mother St. John Fournier, excuse me. Mother St. John Fontbonne never came here. Mother St. John Fournier, who, when she was in St. Louis, opened a school for the children of the men and women of color. And the neighbors protested so that the school had to be shut down. But she did her best to keep it open, and the sisters even took care of the children after the school was closed, made sure they got some education. She brought that spirit with her when she came here, and I think that is the spirit that animates our spirit of service. Changes and challenges, well, that has a whole lot of things in there. Whatever you don't know what to do with, throw in there. Athletics. Athletics was very important in the 21st century, especially after the men came here. It was wonderful for us to be able to have such a great athletic program. It brought many students here. It kept them here. It animated the campus so that I thought it deserved its own chapter, and it's really amazing what we have achieved. And finally, transition to when we moved into our first lay president, and again, when we moved into another presidency after that. People asked me what my greatest challenge was. Ryan wanted to ask me that, and I said, well, I already have it in the PowerPoint, so can I say it there? What do you think it was?
Finding time.
Well, that's true. Finding time. That I could say was probably the greatest challenge. We're not going to talk about that one. That's right, Kathy. That I think it was. What did she? No?
Get that single. Here it.
What did you say?
Condensing and here.
Condensing all the material, that was a challenge. Yeah. Right. Actually, it was the pictures. Well, the pictures are usually the first thing people look at, and sometimes it's the only thing they look at. Somebody said to me about the volume 1, I read your book, and I said, did you? Did you like it? Well, I looked at the pictures. And that's not the only one. All right. I wanted a wide variety of pictures. I wanted it to mirror the text so that we could, people could see visually what we had in the text over there. Administration, faculty, staff, students, buildings, events, and whatever. Well, first of all, I had to find them. Now, our archives are wonderful, but some of the more recent pictures aren't there. I found many of the pictures. Many of the people helped me, the people in institutional advancement and communications and so on. They helped me to find them, but sometimes they weren't identified. And that becomes a great problem, because you can't use the picture if you don't know who it is. And the dates. When did this happen? what I learned. All right, this is the end. Hang in there. In French, we have a proverb. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So let me tell you, I learned that plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. We had many big changes, all women to co-ed. Majority of Sisters of St. Joseph in the administration, faculty, and staff, to a majority of lay people. Majority of the Catholic population to a great variety in various religions. An increase in diversity, broadening of the curriculum, the expansion of the campus. I'm going to put this into the context of what Sister Maria Koska had to say. You've heard this before. You're not here specifically to learn to make a living. You are here to learn how to live. You'll do that someday because you must. But you are here to learn how to live. And I think that's our spirit. You're here to learn how to live. And I used our Fides Caritas Scientia, faith, charity, and knowledge, as my theme for Chestnut Hill College. And this is what the college said about it in 1929. Faith that inspires its students with the value of religion in life. Charity, to understand its students and guide them in the understanding of others. Science, that searches the field of theory and practice for the best of the new without discarding the best of the old in its curriculum. And I think that's very beautiful. 1929 was repeated in 1936. How would I say it now? Faith, the foundation of the college, represents the Catholic tradition in the broadest sense of the word. All are welcome. Charity, service, mutual understanding, and love of the dear neighbor without distinction. And I didn't change science because I thought that's very wonderful, to keep the best of the old without neglecting the new, or embrace the new without losing the best of the old. And I'd like to end with a stanza from a poem by one of our students. Our students wrote some poetry in Barbara's class. Is Barbara still here? Still here, Barbara? Great. Well, this is from one of you. This is from one of your students. It's just one stanza, but he used the rotunda, and I think the rotunda symbolizes so much of our spirit. It fell down in the beginning, but it was built up again. And we've had falls, but we rise up again. And he said, at Chestnut Hill College, you will climb ever higher. With each floor's new hall comes a new spark to inspire. At the peak of the fifth, a new horizon in view fuels a new aspiration to reach wherever it takes you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now it's your turn.
Thank you, Sister Mary Helen. That was wonderful and enlightening. And I got to preview this the other day, and I still learned some things today, so thank you. And as Sister Mary Helen said, I had a couple of questions prepared, which of course she answered in her presentation. But I do have one that I would like to get us started, and I will be glad to walk around and open it up to the audience. So, Sister Mary Helen, if you think about the foresight of our founders, particularly the founders of our college, Mother Clement Lannon, Sister Assisium, Sister Maria Kostka-Logue, Mother Mary James Rogers. What do you think they would say about their vision 100 years ago to where we are today, if they were here this afternoon?
I think they'd see a lot of things in common. I would hope anyway, because I do think that we certainly are here, as Sister Maria Kostka said, preparing people for life. We have really kept to that ideal. Maybe we don't do it in every case, but we really work toward it, and we really tell our students that you are here to prepare for life. We're also giving them a very good education. We have people who have gone into various professions, who have had successful careers, and I think most of all, we're giving them faith, because our founders talked about the importance of faith, the importance of love of the dear neighbor. They talked about service. And I think we're doing that. Maybe we fail in many other things. We're also here serving the underserved, which has been the goal of the college, I would say, since its foundation.
Thank you. And please, your questions.
Would you take the microphone?
I certainly will.
Thank you, and please talk into the microphone. My ears aren't as good as they used to be. I've been here for a few years. Nobody has any questions?
I do. Historians like to say that history is not really about the past so much as it tells us how we got to where we are and gives us some ideas of where we might be going. So what would you say the next 25 years would be like at Chestnut Hill College, or what would you like it to be like?
What would I like it to be like? Well, that's a good question. I think we're going to stay around. That, at least I hope. And I think that so many people have done a lot to try to keep us in existence. First of all, by going co-ed, and secondly, by making many changes, by keeping our tradition safe. What would I like it to be like? I would like it to be secure in enrollment. I think that is probably the most important thing, that we really need to have a good enrollment. If we don't, that's not going to be the best. I hope that we are, able to keep up our enrollment, and certainly that we keep up the quality of the intellectual life that we have had here for many years, for 100 years, really. Our intellectual life is very important. Our faith is very important. And although we welcome people from different groups, the most important thing that they need to learn is learning how to live, is accepting spiritual life, and is doing their best to learn how to live and to be a literate, intellectual person. And I would like to see that. Somebody over there.
Hi, Sister, again.
Hi,
Stefania
Stefania.
Luciani. I love Sister Kashuba. I was a student of hers in the 80s, studying French and Spanish as a double major, minoring in art history and studio art. And I'd love to know how Chestnut Hill College is going to continue bringing the importance of modern languages to the world. The literature, the architecture, the art, philosophy, because it all ties into language, ties people together, and the differences.
Thank you.
Well, that's a very good point, Stefania, and I think about it often myself because unfortunately, languages do not have the respect these days that we had in the past, and not just, I don't mean here at Chestnut Hill College specifically, but in our society today. And we really try to keep to values in our languages, to show people why they're studying a language, and to certainly try to show them that there is a value, that there is a purpose, that communication and understanding of other people is what it's all about. You're not here memorizing verb endings. You're here learning to communicate. And you're learning to think in a way that somebody else thinks, learning how they think. Maybe you can't think that way, but you can learn there's another way to look at things. And if we try to give them the right attitude, hopefully we're also going to get success, and we will have more students interested and continue with the languages and use them in many ways.
Sister, I've been here, this is my 6th year, and I think about what my first year looked like and how different it is, even just 5 years ago. What do you remember about your first year here at Chestnut Hill?
My first year,
Maybe first couple years.
the first couple years, I was rather overwhelmed because I was finishing my master's in Russian at that time, and I had to prepare comprehensives and get my first year going. And I remember saying to somebody, because I have to do my comprehensives this year, they're easy on me. I only have 4 courses this semester. I didn't realize that was normal. But I just felt overwhelmed. I thought, oh my word, will I ever be able to persevere with this? Well, at least they kept me. I don't know how well I did, but but at any rate, I'm still here.
All right, I have 2 questions. The first is, I've heard a rumor that one of Sister Carol's dogs found a secret passage from the college to the mother house, and I wanted to know if there's any corroboration of that story.
I didn't go into legends. It's bad enough to try to find the truth.
This late last week, there was a wonderful presentation here in this same room about women leaders, and one of the speakers talked about Kim, how she's been here for 2 years, and she spent 20 years somewhere else, and she's been here for 2 years, and how she counts herself lucky every day to be able to work in a place that has this specific atmosphere. And Sister Carol and I once sat down trying to put a name onto whatever that atmosphere is, and well, I failed anyway, but it's a very, very special place, and it's easy to take it for granted if you're here a long time, and it's easy to see if you're new. And I wanted to know, in your look into the history of the college over the 2 volumes, how did the sisters and the community here produce this extremely welcoming, extremely caring environment to also have the place where the student could also, as you said, receive a really excellent education. I just wanted to have your input on that.
Well, I don't know if I have an answer, Patrick. How did the sisters produce it? I think in my early days here, our life was spent in this college. All of the sisters, when we were here, we were just an integral part of the college. You just gave all of your life, all of your attention to it. And we knew all the students in the early days. We knew them by name. We lived in the dorms with them, which wasn't always the easiest, neither for them nor for us. But it was something probably that produced the caring atmosphere that you're talking about. And we just, this was our life. And I think this is still my life. And my life rotates around around the college. It's how I was brought up when I came here. And sometimes people that that haven't had that same experience think I'm a little crazy, and maybe I am. But I think that's probably what does it.
Sister, when I was a student of yours, you used to say, "Don't repeat the information back to me. Tell me what you gleaned from the information." So what have you learned from your research about the past 24 years? What lessons could we learn from the past 25 years?
What could we learn? Yeah. Well, what could we learn? Well, to pick ourselves up and move on, because we're going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. And if you let your mistakes pull you down, we won't reach the next 25 years that David asked about. But you have to look and see what made it wrong and what can you do to make it right. I think it's important in life, and it's certainly important in something like running an institution, being in charge of something. Many of us here are in charge of something either in this institution or related to it, and I think you just have to keep on moving, acknowledge your mistakes, but try to make it better. And I think that would be a lesson that all of us can learn, because this is what we have done here, and this is what keeps us going.
Mary Helen, it was kind of an accident this morning that I was teaching Flannery O'Connor, because and I took in the novel that most people don't know about. It's an epistolary novel based on Flannery O'Connor and Robert Lowell, but instead of the Flannery O'Connor character moving back to Milledgeville, Georgia, she moves to Philadelphia, comes home to Philadelphia, and goes to the Germantown College of the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Oh, my.
And she said, I also call it the College of Mary Pats, because in the 50s, most people were a Mary Pat, you know? But she sneaks in, and I don't know where she got this. I did some research on her later. But she sneaks in that there's a French sister on the faculty who would teach her things, taught her Balzac, and she would also swim in the morning and sometimes run. And I thought, that's Mary Helen. That's Mary Helen. How did she find out about you? But she did go, I think, kind of locally, so she must have, I don't know why she used us, but it's definitely you in there. It's you swimming, it's you running, and teaching Balzac. So, you know, anyhow. So there you were today, a character in a novel. I have a copy if anybody wants to see it. Okay.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, Barbara. I'm sorry I don't run anymore, but I enjoyed running around the campus.
Yes, when I when I first came here, I thought Mary Helen was the flying nun because I would see her in the morning with sneakers and her habit, running around the circle with her habit flying behind her. And I'd also like to say that Mary Helen was one of the first people I met here. And we discovered that we both had Fulbrights to France, and we both did research in the same crazy archive in Orléans, where they were turning the lights on and off depending on whether the sun went behind clouds or not. And so Mary Helen and I think the second semester I was here, gave a talk about Charles Péguy, and we've been fast friends ever since. And I've learned so much from Sister Mary Helen Kashuba, as many others have.
Thanks, David. Thanks.
We have time for one more question from the audience, if anyone has one.
Yep. Reduce them all to silence.
Well, we will continue conversation out in the rotunda with our author. But Sister Mary Helen, thank you for this presentation and for your work. And I would also, thank you. I also would just like to publicly acknowledge the dozens of faculty, staff, and administrators who have committed their lives and their life's work to Chestnut Hill College over the past 100 years, and to our students and their education, and most especially to the Sisters of St. Joseph of Philadelphia for your ongoing commitment to our students and our college and their education. We're most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, and thanks so much for coming. And if you're interested in the book, I hope you have a chance to look at it and read it. Look at the pictures, anyways. Said they're the greatest challenge. Thank you.
That was it. Bullshit. What's that?